For years, Far Cry 7 has been plagued by a ton of rumors, leaks, and complete confusion. Some reports suggested Ubisoft was making a traditional sequel, with wealthy family being kidnapped by a group of conspiracy guys. Others claimed they were building an extraction shooter instead. But now, after another wave of leaks and new reports, it finally looks like we have a much clearer picture of what Ubisoft is actually trying to do. And it's probably going to be one of the most divisive Far Cry games the franchise has probably seen in a long while. It's always classic coming from them, so no surprise here at all. The more interesting part though is that Ubisoft isn't abandoning the classic single player campaign people know Far Cry 4, but it also isn't playing it safe. Instead, the company appears to be building two completely different Far Cry experiences at the same time, while also trying to expand the franchise beyond gaming with a live action television series. It's easily one of Ubisoft's biggest bets in years, and after everything the publisher has been through recently, they really need this one to work. According to multiple reports and longtime Ubisoft insiders, Far Cry 7, internally known as Project Blackbird, remains Ubisoft's next big mainline Far Cry game, while Project Maverick continues to exist as its own multiplayer extraction-focused experience. The important part though is that the newest leaks suggest these projects are beginning to influence each other much more than expected. Rather than keeping multiplayer completely separate, Far Cry 7 itself is now rumored to include high-risk survival mechanics inspired by extraction shooters. While still delivering the big cinematic single-player campaign, Ubisoft reportedly hasn't abandoned story at all. The narrative sounds a bit more out there than previous games. Instead of overthrowing another dictator, you're reportedly trying to rescue up to 6 members of your wealthy family after they're kidnapped by a dangerous conspiracy cult known as the Sons of Truth. Every rescue apparently matters, and you'll need to decide who to save first as time continues ticking away. Previous reports have consistently mentioned a real-time 72-hour mechanic, creating constant pressure throughout the campaign instead of allowing players to wander forever before progressing the story. Exactly how that timer works is still unclear, but multiple reports continue pointing toward it remaining one of the game's defining mechanics. That's probably going to be the most controversial feature in the entire game. Far Cry has always been about freedom. Players spend hours hunting, fishing, clearing outposts, or simply exploring the world at their own pace. Suddenly introducing a timer completely changes that philosophy. Some players will absolutely hate feeling rushed every minute they're playing. Others might love finally having genuine tension where every decision actually matters. Now either way, Ubisoft clearly isn't afraid to shake up the formula this time around. Beyond the story, the gameplay itself also sounds far more survival focused than previous entries. Weapon durability is reportedly making a return as a major mechanic, meaning players won't simply rely on one favorite rifle for the entire game. Safe houses are also expected to become central hubs where players regroup, prepare equipment, store supplies, and plan future rescue missions. Wildlife appears to be playing a much bigger role too, with grizzly bears, wolves, foxes, and deer all returning as important parts of the ecosystem rather than simply existing as background decoration. The extraction influence doesn't stop there either. One of the newest reports claims Far Cry 7 may feature a high-stakes PvP scavenging loop layered into certain gameplay segments. If accurate, players won't simply be fighting AI enemies anymore. Some areas could involve competing objectives, valuable resources, and dangerous encounters, where surviving long enough to escape becomes just as important as winning the firefight itself. Ubisoft hasn't confirmed exactly how these systems work yet, but if they're implemented carefully, they could create some incredibly tense moments that feel very different from previous Far Cry games. What's reassuring is that Rogue TX later clarified that Ubisoft hasn't abandoned traditional Far Cry. The leak suggests the game still includes a full narrative campaign while borrowing selected ideas from extraction shooters rather than transforming into one entirely. That's an important distinction because a lot of people immediately assumed Far Cry 7 was becoming nothing more than Escape from Tarkov with Far Cry branding. Based on everything we're hearing now, that doesn't appear to be the case. There's also another ambitious project happening alongside the game itself. Ubisoft is reportedly still moving forward with a live-action Far Cry television series, with earlier reports pointing toward an anthology format where every season tells a completely different survival story inside the Far Cry universe. While Ubisoft hasn't shared many new official details recently, previous reports connected the project with FX and producer Noah Hawley, showing that Ubisoft wants Far Cry to become much more than simply another another video game franchise. That strategy actually makes a lot of sense when you look at where Ubisoft is heading as a company. After years of inconsistent releases, delays, and financial struggles, Ubisoft has repeatedly said it wants its biggest franchises to become long-term entertainment ecosystems rather than standalone games. Assassin's Creed, Rainbow Six, and Far Cry are now at the center of that strategy, with games, television projects, and ongoing support all feeding into one another. Of course, none of this comes without risk. Far Cry fans have been asking Ubisoft to refresh the formula for years, but there's always a fine line between evolving a franchise and changing it so much that it no longer feels like itself. Timers, weapon durability, extraction mechanics, and PvPvE gameplay could end up making Far Cry 7 feel unlike anything that came before it. Whether that's exciting or disappointing probably depends entirely on what you love most about the series. Still, after the longest gap between two mainline Far Cry games in franchise history, it definitely feels like Ubisoft is trying something much more ambitious than simply making Far Cry 6.5. Between a completely new story structure, survival mechanics, a family rescue narrative, evolving multiplayer ideas, an extraction-inspired gameplay loop, and plans to expand the franchise into television, Far Cry 7 is shaping up to be one of Ubisoft's biggest and boldest projects in years. Now the only question left is whether all of those ideas can actually come together into one great game, or whether Ubisoft is trying to do a little too much all at once. You also have to remember that Ubisoft isn't exactly playing it safe anymore. Between Assassin's Creed changing directions, Rainbow Six continuing to evolve, and now Far Cry potentially experimenting with survival mechanics, timers, and extraction-inspired systems, it feels like the company realizes simply making more of the same isn't enough anymore. Whether that's because they genuinely want to innovate, or because recent years have forced them to rethink everything, we'll have to wait and see. The encouraging part is that despite all these changes, every leak still points toward Far Cry 7 remaining a handcrafted single-player adventure first. That's probably the biggest thing fans wanted to hear. The last thing people wanted was for Ubisoft to completely abandon the identity of Far Cry in favor of chasing multiplayer trends. So far, that doesn't appear to be happening, and if Ubisoft can actually pull this off, keeping the classic Far Cry sandbox while adding deeper survival mechanics, more meaningful choices, smarter AI, and a campaign that constantly keeps you under pressure, this could end up feeling like the biggest leap the franchise has made since Far Cry 3 completely reinvented the series over a decade ago. But that's still the biggest if. Ubisoft has some fantastic ideas on paper, but now they have to prove they can actually bring all of them together into one great game. If they do, Far Cry 7 could surprise a lot of people. If they don't, it risks becoming another ambitious project that simply tried to do too much. Right now, it genuinely feels like one of the most interesting Ubisoft games in development, and hopefully we won't have to wait much longer before we finally see what it actually looks like in action. For more on this game, like the video now and subscribe to stay tuned.